And I didn't get a chance to ask you how you are. How are you feeling? How
Oh,
are you?
thank you for asking that.
Mm,
It's been a busy few months for me.
mm,
I am well. I
mm,
am well. I am paying great attention to the way I speak to myself
mm,
in multitasking, in trying to juggle all these different commitments that I have. It's
mm,
difficult to feel pressured in the day to day, isn't it? And we've all got so many kind of stresses weighing on us.
mm.
I'm paying great attention to how I speak to myself and trying to be my own cheerleader,
Yes. Do
you
you have
know?
do you have some key things that you say to yourself to kind of be your own cheerleader? That's helpful.
Yeah, I tell myself that I'm doing a good job.
Yeah.
Like, "You're doing really well, Marie. Come on.
Yeah.
Like, you've already done this today. Don't worry, you always get it done." That type of
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
you
Yeah. Yeah.
know? And I think the inner voice is such an interesting constant that we all have,
Mm,
and it's so easy for that inner voice to talk to us without us really being aware
mm,
that that's what's happening
mm.
every day, all the time.
Yeah.
And depending on how you've trained your inner voice, it might be saying helpful things, but it could also say, like, really negative things that don't really lift you, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. I think it's so important to, yeah, lift yourself up and, like you said, ignore that inner critic because
Yeah,
that's sometimes that's the
inner
default of
critic
humanity.
yes, that inner
Yeah.
critic works hard.
Yeah. It works harder than the inner praiser.
Yes,
Do you know what I mean?
absolutely.
It's a security thing, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yeah.
Like you gotta be you keep yourself safe. If we had an
Yes.
inner yes, you can do it, before you know it, people jumping out of planes into, fires and whatever. So you gotta have an inner maybe you
That's
shouldn't
a
do
good
that.
point.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
such a good point.
So last time we spoke, I can't imagine. I was on my way to do the interview and I was like, we spoke in I think in 2022.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
4 years ago, we
I
spoke
know, I got
about you.
so many more grey hairs since then.
You and me both. Well, I don't really see them, but me too. Like little time, but we last time we were actually talking about one for sorrow, two for joy.
Yeah, yeah,
Your baby, your
I
first
know.
creation.
Yeah,
It's interesting because here on Chats of Africa,
yeah.
I say the remit is I speak to talented Africans across the world.
Mhm,
And you are said talented African, and you are, in this world. But also the key thing that I try to get before we got into your work, your
mm,
your debut and your brand new one, Sister of Mine, that's coming out in April. I'd
mm.
love to hear about how we end up here. Like, how does Marie-Claire Amuah end up in this kind of what was she like as a child to begin with, actually? That would be nice to think.
Gosh,
Yeah.
that's such a good and full question.
Yeah.
Um, when I speak to young people, I always talk about the creative parts of ourselves that we are more in tune with, I think, the younger we are
Mm,
than we are as adults. Well, obviously, that depends on, for example, what career path you take, what the influences in your life are, um, and also maybe how you're raised. There are some cultures that might not encourage creativity as much as others, or some parents who might be concerned about where this leads to if they allow their child to indulge their love of theatre, and what job might they get at the end of it, that type of thing.
mm,
In my case, I think I would never have described myself as a creative person. In my family, my, siblings are and my parents actually are quite artistic if you force their hand in terms of, um drawing, painting, creating with their hands, that type of thing. And I was probably the black sheep in that sense and in many others as well. Um, Growing up, I was probably quite academic. Um, I wouldn't say my family life was the easiest or most simple. I probably got my drive and motivation in school, and I decided quite early on that I was going to be a lawyer, but main and a barrister specifically, but mainly because I advocated very well for myself and others, and I had it said to me, "You would be a good barrister." And then I started to explore what that entailed, and I decided that was going to be my career path. Reading, I read so enthusiastically as a child. Did I write? Yes, probably. It was one of my preferred methods of communication. Um, I'm trying to decide how much to give you in detail, or whether to kind of come full circle to my initial point. When I started my career at the bar, I did not have any time to indulge, if you like, the creative part of me, which was the part that loved reading and writing. It was, it felt like work to read a book of fiction after reading case papers in preparation for court the next day. So I really abandoned that side of me. And I think as people, when we don't access the creative parts of ourselves and allow that part of ourselves to breathe, I think it breeds a certain discontent and frustration. We all have we all have a type of creativity in us, whether it's singing, cooking, painting, ceramics, I don't know, dancing, whatever. I feel like if you deny yourself that outlet, you will come to know about it sooner rather than later. In COVID, I kind of hit a wall and I stopped working for a couple of months. And and one day I just had this really visceral urge to write, and I wanted to
Mm.
write very specifically with pen on paper.
Wow.
And then that translated to typing because my thoughts
Mm.
were coming so kind of hard and fast that I think there's a beauty in writing pen on paper, and we've kind of forgotten that too, like
Yes.
in
Yeah.
letters and stuff.
You know, what's interesting that you say that. I was saying wow because of course you got the urge, but I had the same urge
Oh,
in
did you?
COVID. Yeah, literally.
To write?
To write pen on
Mm,
paper.
yeah,
Because, I'd write screenplays and plays or whatever, and I'm always going straight to typing. And I wanted to write like a novel, and I
yeah,
just went, I want to write it out. So I went to
yeah.
a cafe every day and did exactly that. And I don't know where that urge came from, but you're right. Yeah, we lose that.
It's kind
Uh,
of beautiful though, I think.
yeah, yeah, it
Um,
is. Yeah.
and I guess if you think of like this generation, like I don't know how, I guess in school and stuff they'll write pen to paper, but in the digital world we live in, it's such a rare thing to reach for your pen.
Yeah, they don't even do that. They don't even
No.
do that anymore. And I worked in a school, and then they for a range of different reasons,
Yeah.
some accessibility reasons, but a lot of times kids get access to laptops and
Yeah,
iPads.
yeah, straight away, tablets, what have you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, and even when they do write, they're using stylus pens onto the onto the iPad.
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
pen and paper thing is almost becoming like, the old
Yeah.
school papyrus, and it's like, what is this,
Yeah.
fiction?
Yeah, exactly.
What is this?
Like you've got an inkwell and a
Yeah,
feather
yeah,
or something.
exactly. Yeah. Um,
But that
mm,
basically that's how One for Sorrow, Two for Joy came about, and I
yeah,
didn't intend to start writing a
yeah.
a novel, but I guess in 2 months I wrote kind of I spent all day writing, and I
Yeah.
would wake up thinking about what I was gonna write, and I'd go to sleep thinking about it. I'd
Mm.
dream about it, and that's how One for Sorrow was born, and then from there, you know?
Wow. You've had, you've mentioned a few things around kind of creativity and how
Mm,
that you felt like that wasn't as encouraged, or rather sometimes isn't as encouraged.
mm.
And for yourself, what was like maybe alongside your writing, what other creative things did you like to indulge in, whether as a spectator or as an active participant?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. I know this might sound like a silly one, but I'm sure it's one that a lot of people can relate to. You know, growing up with siblings, like role play, reenactments, acting, I guess, if you like. We would and I do put this in the category of creativity because we would play WWF, wrestling, and we would play gladiators and
Mm,
all the fun and imagination that
mm,
comes with that. And it calls upon you to really, you know, explore those little minds of yours. So, yeah, or even like playing teachers at school or going to the shop, a lot of that kind of role play thing. I don't know that I am a natural actor, but I'm just thinking in those very early years, we did a lot of that kind of thing, me and my siblings.
mm.
I I can't sing very well. I can't no, sorry, very well at all. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
I'm not artistic.
Mm.
Um, I can't sew.
Oh, oh.
Do I cook? Yeah.
Mm.
Do you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I would say it was I would say it was really or I really enjoyed, um I really enjoyed reading. I
Mm,
really enjoyed the transportation in the mind to another place, and I remember from quite a young age, I would wonder about things like, how does somebody start to tell a story?
mm,
Like, what how do you decide what you put on the first page and on the first line? That
mm,
type of thing. I loved film as a
mm.
child.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does
And
that what about you? What kind of thing did you like?
similar, you just basically, it's like similar childhoods. I mean, I grew up partly in Uganda and
Mm.
partly in London. And yes, the WWF or WCW, we used to kind of like, try to mimic that. But
Yeah.
when with my siblings, we used to put on like we write short films and film them on like the JVC cameras.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
and screen them for our family. So
Yeah.
we have like in our house, we have like some classics that we created, a few that had some sequels that never materialized. But there's a lot of like, and all of us are now creatives to a certain degree. Like
Really?
there's five of us, and we all we've created at least some kind of written project, whether me as a writer, my brother's a writer, filmmaker, my other brother, he's working on an idea, and my sister, she went to uni and she wrote a radio play, and my other sister, she's a painter. Like there's
Wow.
there's so many, and then the funny thing is our mum and dad are not that, like, they don't write. My
Were
mum,
they encouraging of you?
they were so definitely out of like being studious. So they were encouraging us to
Yeah.
like
Oh.
read. And our dad was very like, when I come back, make sure you've read this, and I want to know what it's about. Write me a report. My mum was very much, you need to read. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
But when it came to kind of actually performing, to be honest with you, they were against it. I had to.
Mhm.
Maybe you've experienced this, but I had the opportunity to be in a play when I was 17, and I
Mm.
nearly didn't take that opportunity because my mum wanted me to focus on my A levels, and I went against that, and it led to me becoming a professional actor. But had I not, only until I said, and this with respect, only when I said, "Oh, they're paying us," she went, "You need to go to that audition right now." so, so, so of
And
course,
kind of you do understand their
yeah.
concern. I think also being, um, like my parents moving from Ghana to London,
Mm,
that brings with it its own kind of
mm,
there's part I guess, part trauma, part
mm,
you want your child to succeed at all costs in this country that you've moved to,
mm,
well, presumably to give them every opportunity. But I think within African cultures, there is that emphasis away from the creative oftentimes. And I think that's a shame. It's funny, I went to my uncle's 70th birthday dinner recently, and he was really enjoying telling us stories of their childhood. And it happens that he was a very talented footballer, but
Mm.
his parents forbade him from playing playing recreationally to and becoming more serious with it, to the point of punishment if they found out he had, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, that's a very interesting, and this is in Ghana, 70 odd years ago, but
Mm.
it's a very interesting idea to wonder what path one's life could have taken
Yeah.
had that creative part of them not seen as, or maybe untraditional path been
Yeah.
explored.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree because it actually makes me think of a conversation I had with my dad where I was in my 20s, mid 20s, and the acting was going great, but like there was this thing where he would always ask me, "How did it go? What did they say?" And I was like, "Oh
Mm.
yeah, they said good, good." So he calls my auditions good, good because they always saying good. So he told me once, he was like, "Why don't you just stop all this good, good stuff and just get a regular job?"
Mm.
And I had to, very firmly tell him, I've spent so many years like being it. I'm not gonna give up now. I'm not gonna.
Mm.
Why would I? And but I see, like you said, I see where he was coming from because
Mm.
exactly that. I'd spent so many years being a part of like a or play pursuing a career
Mm.
that I neglected other kind of things I could have done to help me make money. And now I'm playing catch up at this moment. And he was coming from trying to like,
Mm.
I guess protect that and give me some kind of security. But I'm glad, there's
That's
no
it,
there's
security, that's the word, yeah.
the security. So I do understand absolutely. Um, but for yourself, it sounds like you had like a real kind of drive to be a barrister or to go into the law. When did
Yeah.
you start acting upon that? At what age do you start going, yes, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm going to do.
Well, I guess my vision for myself was interrupted by the fact that I was unwell in my teens, and I had a neurological condition that actually made me question whether I could pursue a career as a barrister, which I understood by that time was very physically demanding as well as mentally demanding. So I kind of explored some other areas and came back full circle and decided I was going to give this a go. And I was called to the bar in 2011, which, saying that makes me just realize how much time has passed since. So, you know, day to day, I combine law work with my writing, and that, I guess, gives me the security that I also I want security, I crave security. Writing, publishing is an interesting world, and it's been a complete learning experience for me, publishing 2 books. Um, but we are not all, I always say J.K. Rowling, but substitute J.K. Rowling for any other, highly successful, author who has managed to turn their passion into something incredibly lucrative. But, writing doesn't pay my bills.
Mm.
Law pays my bills.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think our parents are trying to kind of drill into us.
Yeah,
And when I
yeah.
was younger, I didn't quite understand that. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
you're absolutely right. Um,
But it's
yeah.
also a bit sad to have to make that choice.
Mm.
I heard or read recently that Ireland was going to start paying
Yeah.
its creatives,
Yeah.
and I thought, what a brilliant initiative,
Yeah.
to allow people to really pursue and as a their talents, but as a result, Ireland will retain its really rich culture, and I think that's to be celebrated. You know, it's an example that perhaps other countries could follow because the choice shouldn't have to be between, you know, pursuing the arts or another path that will ensure create stability, but not necessarily, I don't know, fulfill one's I don't know, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I do. Yeah, and it's also it's the dev. I feel like it stems from the devaluing or the
Mm,
devaluation of like the arts and the creativity, and
absolutely.
the maybe it's because it's all around us and there isn't a kind of quantifiable measurement of like say maybe similar to architecture, similar to
Yeah.
mathematics or the science,
Mm,
where people can go, well, I see the numbers you're working on, I see the buildings you're building and the diagrams. But whereas with singing or
yeah,
acting or
exactly.
painting, there's sometimes a devaluing of that because it feels like it can be done by anyone. It feels like
Mhm.
I could do this. So when the MPs and the kind of lawmakers start to kind of um advocates of the arts propose to them that maybe you should pay people like like a wage.
Mm.
They start to think, but why should we? Like all they're
Mm.
doing is "Blah," and
Yeah.
forgetting that the first thing they do when they get home is turn the TV on and watch someone go blah, blah, blah. The first thing they do on their way to work is open, a Sister of Mine in April. They will April 26th,
Yeah.
and have a read of that. But they, all the clothes they have on have been knitted and sewed by an artist.
All of the above, or that in their recreational time, they go to see a play at the theatre that's performed
Yes,
by people who have
yeah,
honed their craft to such an art, or
yeah,
they, you know, go to concerts by their,
yeah.
you know, musical concerts by their favorite artists and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or even their kind of colonial exploits and kind of have been, or even their place in the world has been amplified by this kind of literature and creative, like the English novel has
mm,
put England on the map in a big
mm,
way, but yet it's devalued arts,
mm.
Shakespeare, music. So, putting that to the side, it's just like there's such a devaluing of the arts that I feel like, even in paying people, for example, when someone says, "Oh, I need to get paid this much," it's like, "Oh, really?" But if an architect said, "My fee is this," we'd all say, "Absolutely," because you're going to put this building up. But
That's a
yeah,
really good,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
mm,
it's fascinating.
mm,
Fascinating. So I remember someone mentioned that when it was like to do with contract law. I know you work within white collar, and I would love to ask you about that,
mm.
your work with that. But they mentioned that when they draft contracts, they see it as almost a type of writing, like they're storytelling to a certain degree. Do you feel like you've injected some of your kind of law knowledge and your understanding of law within your writing, or is it really divorced from that?
Well, language is very important in law.
Mm,
The use of words is very important.
mm,
The the specificity upon which contractual terms, etc., depend
mm,
carries the entire, like, weight of the document.
yeah.
So I would say that, I you know, I'm just thinking statutory interpretation relies on the accuracy of language.
Mm,
The enforcement of the law relies on on the application
mm,
of written principles
mm,
to factual scenarios, etc. So I'd say, yeah, language is highly important, and I am very I am probably quite anal when it comes to the use of language, in the sense that I will notice
mm,
incorrect use of language
mm,
and, um, I'm not that type of person who would. I pride myself in the fact that I'm a very humble person. I would never correct somebody's use of language when I understand the meaning in a very social or relaxed environment.
Mm,
But perhaps if somebody in a position of power is maybe seeking to abuse that power, and in their communication, if I see faults in that, then I will probably
mm,
challenge that. Yeah, and that's
mm,
outside my work.
mm,
Um, and it's funny because I think that's innate in me, but it's probably refined, um, by way of my profession, and maybe the two meet in my writing.
yeah, I think so. And in your, sophomore offering, Sister of Mine, which actually comes out on the 9th of April,
Oh,
2026.
April.
Really excited
April.
for people to read that.
Thank you.
Um, you got dope, dope. You got
What do you think of the cover? I really
I
like it.
love this cover. I was
Good.
about to tell I didn't, I didn't think if it was worth me kind of mentioning. I love
No, I
this cover.
love the
Like
cover.
it really kind of pops
Yeah.
and then once you've read the book, you also see, I guess I love the in between kind of that, right, I should have it there. The flora kind of that
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's
Yeah,
to kind of, and without giving people, we'll talk about the
yeah,
significance of that.
yeah.
But I was gonna say in Sister of Mine,
Mm.
there is that real precision of language,
Oh,
but
thank you.
in a very, it's not legalese whatsoever. Like
Never. No.
I think Sika's narration is handled with such, like, she takes us on this journey in a very personal way,
Mhm.
in a colloquial but masterful way as well.
Oh, thank you, Candy.
Yeah,
That's really kind.
seriously, I was like, it's a beautiful book, and
Thank you.
before and I can't wait. We're gonna jump in this, I promise, people. But I think it's important to also maybe hear a little bit about the white collar, as because you said you balanced that alongside your writing. What does that entail? Are you able to talk about
Well,
that?